1. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, the speech of the previous speaker proves the case of PM because it's not about these labels being good or bad or justified or not to use in a free society, but uniquely about what the popularization and proliferation of such do for the movement. They try and frame it as, oh, we have a boomer or old way of looking at things. But that's exactly the point, right? The feminist movement shouldn't be seen from any specific lens or shouldn't have a bias. Meaning, this shouldn't be solely seen from the lens of a progressive liberal left, someone who has a thicker skin, someone who wants to call out the conservative Karen, etc. Because, for reasons that my partners already talked about, literally create infighting within the movement. My POI to the previous speaker was going to be, if you insult someone by not even calling them out by their name or talking about what they did and resort to this whole meme culture that you glibly characterize to be moot or not harmful, what incentive do they have to listen to you? Sure, it might be slow to do the right thing, but there's a reason we don't just start like shouting at children. Or there's a reason why we don't just start calling people the sickest and most offensive, pejorative label we can think about that I'd rather not say for reasons of equity and offending people, just because it gets the message across. Meaning, we're very much fine to be able to not stoop down to their level and make two wrongs a bigger wrong at the point in which you legitimize and justify them to be able to react to you and even defend themselves at the point in which you nuance this to being popular. Something that I don't think their side fully explains the counterfactual. Because as this becomes more and more popular, that is the point in which people become less and less sensitized to the particular thing and start saying, oh, doesn't affect me, gets the job done, all good. Sounds like the modern day N-word or the modern day Jim Crow label against people of color. We can talk about all of these things all day, but the point in which you popularize one can lead to an offensive counterculture and people responding back to those particular things, drowning out the discussions. What has side government consistently proven? 4 things. Number 1, is this something the feminist movement should do? We told you in principle no, because it infringes on intersectionality. Number 2, is this even an effective call-out mechanism? And will this lead to proper and better discourse? We say no, and we say even if it did, that eventually leads to the bad kind of discourse that we don't want reflecting on the optics of the feminist movement, because the feminist movement isn't a social construct. It's not a group of woke liberal women who have a thicker skin. It's about the full range of intersectionality. My partners even explained how Karen, in and of itself, is part of the movement, bro, because of that intersectionality. And the point in which you create infighting within your members is the point in which it makes it harder for them to understand and find a sense of community and belongingness. The third is, what are the impacts when you popularize it? And that's something that their side hasn't really engaged on. I want to be very clear. We've engaged with them. They haven't engaged with us. Check the flow of what's happening in the debate with your notes, my friend. Number 4, how are individual women particularly affected by that? And that was towards the latter third of my deputy's extension, wherein he talked about a scenario analysis of Karen and non-Karen knowing about the label and definition or not. Because I think it's pretty fair to say that not everyone's on social media or on the same page. But let's respond to things that the previous speaker gives us, right? The first thing they say is that status quo doesn't work. Yeah, but shoving the message down and being mean isn't gonna make them appreciate the message more. The debate isn't about changing the Karen, because I'd posit that that's not a burden or an anchor point that I think the debate's resting upon. Because I think it's also fair to say that it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, man. Meaning if they're a toxic, middle-aged tita, they probably have ingrained ideologies and cults of personality already. Things probably rooted on things we can't control. Ego, upbringing, religion and culture. Maybe they had a tiger parent. Heck, maybe they have a type A personality. I'm not saying it's justified to be an asshole to service workers. I'm saying that these are very legitimate things we should call out, set an example of, and even if, by the way, they never change, we don't resort to that, and we don't want our daughters, our sisters, our young debaters mimicking these pejorative labels at the point in which you create a very escalatory and very hostile environment. The second thing they say is that it's also an assertion. This was rooted on like cultural oppression. Bro, it wasn't, for real. Just vibe check that. This didn't come from people of color trying to systemically call out white supremacy. It came from degenerates on fucking Reddit or on social media who made it funny. Let's get this chubby middle-aged lady. Let's call her, what's the whitest random name we can think of? The same way in the Philippines we have Juan de la Cruz, right? Karen. Yeah, Karen. Maybe she works in Walmart. Maybe she's a bitch for all of these reasons. That's exactly the point in which you fucking personify and make ad hominem the situation, which is not an antithesis to white supremacy. In fact, it's an exercise of such when you make it the discussion about that. When you shift the Overton window to being so left and woke and progressive, kasi it works, kasi they won't be offended because it's effective, is exactly the point in which it becomes a self-fulfilling thing of the very thing it's trying to call out. So it's not. But fine, let's engage. Even if it were like this antithetical white supremacy angle that you buy, it doesn't mean it's right or effective and can just exacerbate the situation among people. Ladies and gentlemen, the popularization of these trends and labels make it so easy for young children, especially with social media on their iPads, to see this particular behavior. And the point in which you justify and say that it's fine because all women do it is the point in which people start doing it and it becomes escalatory and hostile and toxic. We reject that. We are very proud to stand on side proposition.